Get this man out of here, he doesn't belong. That's the very first sentence Malcolm Reed hears inside the private jet terminal. Not a greeting, not a question. A command. A dismissal. A sentence sharp enough to slice through dignity like a blade. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more jaw-dropping stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to our main character. Get this man out of here, he doesn't belong. That's the very first sentence Malcolm Reed hears inside the private jet terminal. Not a greeting, not a question. A command. A dismissal. A sentence sharp enough to slice through dignity like a blade. And it isn't whispered. It isn't subtle. It's spoken loudly, arrogantly, for everyone in that marble lobby to hear. Now imagine being Malcolm Reed in that moment. A man who has spent decades breaking barriers. A man who has signed billion-dollar contracts. A man who doesn't just ride airplanes, he owns them. But none of that matters. Because to Captain Harris, the pilot standing there with folded arms and narrowed eyes, Malcolm is just another black man who doesn't fit the picture in his head of wealth. The air is heavy with entitlement. You can almost feel the temperature drop as Harris's words echo against the walls. Staff members pause mid-step. A receptionist pretends to check her screen but tilts her head to listen. Somewhere, a phone is already being raised. Someone knows this is worth recording. Malcolm doesn't speak right away. And that silence only makes Harris bolder. I said, remove him. This is a secured area. Do you think anyone's just going to stroll in off the street and board a $40 million aircraft? Not a chance. Not him. Not him. Those two words hang there, heavy, poisonous. Not him. And Malcolm, calm but unshaken, finally answers. I am scheduled for the 9 o'clock flight. But Harris laughs. Not kindly. Not out of disbelief. This is the kind of laugh designed to humiliate. The kind of laugh people use when they want everyone else in the room to know, this man is beneath me. You? On this flight? Harris sneers. Listen, I've been flying executives and millionaires for 20 years, and I can tell you right now, you don't look like a man who belongs on a private jet. The cruelty isn't in the words alone. It's in the tone. The confidence. The absolute certainty that he can strip Malcolm down with a single sentence. And Malcolm? He doesn't shout. He doesn't beg. He just says, firmly. You should check the manifest before making assumptions. But Harris waves him off like a child tugging at his sleeve. I don't need to check anything. I can spot imposters from a mile away. You people don't get past me. There it is. The phrase that exposes the truth. You people. And the room hears it. The whispers start. Did he just say that? One woman murmurs. Someone else gasps softly. But Harris doesn't notice, or doesn't care. He doubles down, voice rising. Security will be here in 2 minutes. You can wait outside, or you can be dragged out. Your choice. Dragged out. That's how this man talks to the majority owner of the very airline he flies for. That's how little he thinks of him. And Malcolm knows it. But here's the thing about Malcolm Reed, he is patient. He is deliberate. He knows that truth, when spoken at the right moment, can destroy arrogance faster than any argument. So instead of announcing his power, he gives Harris one last chance. I know whose aircraft this is. And I know I belong here. But Harris smirks, loud enough for everyone to hear. You know whose aircraft this is? Do you? He leans in closer, voice cutting, dripping with disdain. Well, let me enlighten you. This aircraft belongs to people with wealth. People with pedigree. People with standards. And you, you are none of those things. The silence that follows is suffocating. For 3 full seconds, not a soul moves. And then, someone laughs nervously, someone else mutters, "Unbelievable," and the energy in the room turns electric. This is no longer a misunderstanding. This is humiliation, weaponized in public. And in those first 5 minutes, before the truth comes crashing down, Malcolm Reed, the man who built this empire, is being treated like a trespasser. But here's the part Harris doesn't know. Here's the part no one in that room is ready for. The man he is trying to throw out, is the man who signs his paycheck. The man who decides whether he flies another day or never again. The man who, in a few minutes, will flip this entire room upside down with nothing but his name. Because the name written on the ownership papers of that aircraft, is Malcolm Reed. And when the truth lands, it will hit harder than any jet touching down on that runway. If this opening has already struck a nerve, don't let go now. The deeper we go, the more the truth unravels. Share this story with someone who needs to hear what happens next. The moment Captain Harris says, "And you are none of those things," the room changes. It's no longer just a pilot confronting a passenger. It's a public trial of belonging. One man's voice, filled with arrogance, becomes the gavel. And Malcolm Reed, the billionaire owner, the quiet architect of the very airline standing before him, is the one being judged as unworthy. The receptionist clears her throat softly, as if wanting to interrupt, but Harris shuts her down with a sharp wave of his hand. "Don't even bother checking the list," he snaps. "I know who belongs here. This man doesn't." Now, listen closely to that. Because in that sentence, Harris is saying more than he realizes. He's saying, "My prejudice is stronger than any evidence." He's saying, "My word outweighs truth." He's saying, "I have the power to decide reality itself." And Malcolm, standing calm and silent, understands every layer of that cruelty. He's lived it before. In boardrooms, where his ideas were dismissed until repeated by someone else. In investor meetings, where his credentials, Harvard degree, Stanford MBA, years at NASA, were brushed aside until he proved them with results. And now, here, in the very empire he built, he's being told, "You don't belong." Malcolm tries once more, measured, deliberate. "My name is Malcolm Reed. If you check your manifest." But Harris cuts him off, raising his voice so everyone hears. "Don't waste your breath. I don't need to check anything. And I don't care what name you give me. You could call yourself the President of the United States and I still wouldn't let you pass those doors." A few people gasp at that. One man near the window whispers, "Is he serious?" Another mutters, "This is going too far." But Harris thrives on the performance. He puffs his chest, his voice sharp, each word deliberate. "You think money buys access? You think anyone can just walk in here and claim they're important? Not under my watch. Not in my terminal." Notice what he says there, "my terminal." He speaks as if he owns it. As if the building, the plane, the company belong to him. But they don't. They never did. And that irony will soon crush him. Still, for now, Harris enjoys his stage. He leans closer to Malcolm, lowering his voice but sharpening its edge. "Here's how this works. People like you wait outside until they're invited in. People like you don't get to dictate terms. People like you don't fly private. It's not just rejection anymore. It's degradation. It's prejudice spelled out in a language designed to humiliate." Malcolm doesn't flinch. He doesn't shrink. He simply repeats, steady as stone. "My name is Malcolm Reed. You should confirm it before saying anything further." And that calmness, it rattles Harris. Because arrogance feeds on fear. On defensiveness. But Malcolm gives him nothing. Only quiet authority. So Harris raises the stakes. "Security," he shouts toward the lobby desk. "I want him out of here immediately. If he refuses, I'll have him arrested for trespassing." The word arrested lands like a hammer. Staff members shift uncomfortably. No one moves to call security yet, but the tension is unbearable. One woman whispers, "He said arrested." Another answers, "This doesn't feel right." But Harris is blind to the discomfort. He's locked into his own story, the story where he's the gatekeeper and Malcolm is the intruder. The story where power belongs only to those who look the part. Malcolm takes a breath, his voice calm but firm. "You are making a mistake that will cost you dearly." But Harris smirks. And that smirk, that tiny soundless gesture, tells everyone in the room exactly what he thinks. He thinks Malcolm is bluffing. He thinks he's dealing with a man desperate to belong. A man powerless to change the situation. And so he says, smug and certain, "The only mistake here is you thinking you belong anywhere near this jet." The silence after that is suffocating. The insult hangs in the air like smoke, choking anyone who dares breathe it in. And everyone, every receptionist, every assistant, every passenger, knows something irreversible has just been said. But here's the thing about injustice. It builds pressure like a storm cloud. And the longer it grows, the harder it will strike when it finally breaks. Because in that moment, Captain Harris believes he's untouchable. But within the hour, his entire career, his reputation, his life as he knows it will collapse under the weight of the truth. And that truth has a name. Malcolm Reed. Captain Harris's words, "The only mistake here is you thinking you belong anywhere near this jet," still echo in the air like smoke that refuses to clear. And for a moment, the silence feels unbearable. It is the kind of silence that swallows a room whole. The kind that makes everyone inside realize they've just heard something they'll never forget. Malcolm Reed stands still, his presence unshaken. But the room itself? The room bends toward Harris's arrogance, because arrogance spoken with authority always sounds convincing, at least for a moment. The receptionist finally speaks, her voice trembling. "Captain, perhaps we should just..." But Harris cuts her off, sharp and impatient. "No. I said what I said. I don't need to waste my time cross-checking names. Do you think every stranger who wanders in here gets a seat on this flight? This isn't public transport. This is a private airline, for people who can afford it. People with pedigree. Not him." And once again, "not him" becomes the refrain. A dismissal dressed as certainty. A man in a gray suit nearby clears his throat. "Maybe just check his name, Captain. Wouldn't that settle it?" But Harris isn't here to settle anything. He's here to dominate. And domination never pauses to check facts. He snaps back, voice sharp. "I don't need to check his name. I know exactly what's happening here. He's bluffing. He thinks if he pretends hard enough, he'll get past us. Not on my watch." Notice how Harris keeps saying my watch, my terminal, my flight. Ownership is his language, even though ownership is the one thing he doesn't have. But he doesn't know that yet. Malcolm speaks calmly again, unbothered by the storm around him. "My name is Malcolm Reed. I am on the manifest. I suggest you confirm." But Harris scoffs so loudly that the sound ricochets around the terminal. "Manifest? Do you really expect me to believe that? Do you know how many fakes try this? Men like you walk in, claiming big names, hoping no one checks too closely. I've seen it before. You're no different." The receptionist whispers under her breath, but the microphone in her headset picks it up anyway. This doesn't feel right. And now, witnesses are dividing. Some fold their arms, siding with Harris. Others glance nervously at Malcolm, unsure, uneasy with what they're hearing. Because Harris isn't just enforcing rules anymore, he's making it personal. A young assistant near the wall murmurs, "Why is he talking to him like that? That's harsh." And another voice answers quickly, "He's just doing his job. Probably a scammer. You never know with people." There it is again, you never know with people. That coded language of suspicion, built on centuries of prejudice. But Malcolm doesn't falter. His voice, steady and grounded, slices through the tension. "I built this airline on discipline, precision, and truth. And right now, truth is what you're ignoring. The irony of his words, the hidden weight of them, hangs in the air, unnoticed by Harris. But others sense something different in the tone. Something dangerous. Still, Harris barrels forward. I'm done wasting my time. Security, now. Escort him out before I have the police here. The receptionist hesitates. Her hand hovers over the phone. But her voice quivers. Captain, are you sure? Maybe we should confirm first. I said now. Harris barks, cutting her off like a drill sergeant. Call security. Call the police if you must. But get him out of here. I will not have this man embarrassing my terminal. That word again, my. His obsession with control is so complete, he's blind to the truth waiting to destroy him. Malcolm steps forward slightly, his voice low, steady, commanding. Think very carefully before you involve the police. Because once you do, the consequences will extend far beyond this terminal. But Harris only hears defiance. He mistakes calm authority for bluffing arrogance. And so he sneers. Consequences? The only consequences here are yours. When security arrives, you'll be handcuffed and escorted off the premises. Trespassing on private property carries real penalties. Did you think about that before walking in here? The murmurs grow louder now. One woman whispers, "This is going too far." Another mutters, "He hasn't even checked his name." Why not just check? And then comes the voice of a businessman in the corner, loud enough to carry across the lobby. Captain, I've flown this airline for years. You've always been professional. But this doesn't sound like you. Why not confirm? But Harris doubles down, his pride driving him into the ground. I don't need to confirm. Do you not understand? Men like him don't belong here. They don't fly private. They don't own jets. They don't sit in leather seats drinking champagne while the rest of us work for it. I know who belongs. And I know he doesn't. Every word slices deeper. Every word adds to the humiliation. And still, Malcolm holds his composure. He replies only. Your confidence will be your downfall. But Harris doesn't hear it. Or perhaps he hears it and laughs it away. He smirks, full of venom. Downfall? The only one falling today is you, falling straight out of this terminal when security drags you by the arms. And with that, he turns to the receptionist again, snapping. Call now. The receptionist's hand shakes as she dials. Every ring of the phone tightens the tension. Every second brings the story closer to breaking. And as the call connects, the lobby is thick with whispers. Some pity Malcolm. Some support Harris. Some record in silence, knowing something explosive is unfolding. And in the middle of it all, Malcolm Reed, the man who owns everything they see, is being treated like nothing. This is what arrogance looks like before it collapses. This is what prejudice sounds like before truth burns it away. And it is building. Minute by minute. Word by word. To a reveal so devastating that the silence afterward will last longer than any insult spoken today. Because when the truth finally lands, the world of Captain Harris will collapse in an instant. The humiliation has only just begun, and the pressure is building. If you've ever been underestimated, stay with me. And if this story is resonating with you, subscribe so you don't miss the moment everything changes. The phone is still ringing. Each chime feels like a countdown. A countdown to humiliation. A countdown to escalation. A countdown to the moment when words can no longer be taken back. And in that lobby, every ear is tuned in. Every breath is held. Because they know, something is about to break. The receptionist finally speaks into the line. Yes, this is the private terminal. We need security immediately. We have an intruder. The word intruder cuts through the room like a blade. And though Malcolm Reed stands tall, steady, and calm, the weight of that insult is heavier than anything spoken so far. But instead of reacting with anger, he lets silence answer for him. Silence, steady and commanding. Silence that unsettles Harris far more than rage ever could. Harris smirks, arms folded. There. It's done. Security's on the way. You'll be out of here in 5 minutes. Maybe less. But Malcolm's voice enters then, calm and deep, a quiet storm about to break. You've embarrassed yourself enough. I suggest you end this before it destroys you. The smirk fades, just slightly, from Harris's face. But arrogance is a stubborn disease. He laughs again, too loudly, trying to cover the flicker of doubt. Destroy me? Do you have any idea who I am? 20 years in this industry. 20 years flying men who own the world. You? You don't even belong in the lobby. And then it happens. The moment when Malcolm Reed decides silence is no longer enough. The moment when patience turns into revelation. He speaks slowly, deliberately. Captain Harris, the man you're trying to throw out of this terminal, is the man who owns it. The words drop heavy, impossible to ignore. A few people gasp aloud. One assistant murmurs, "Wait, what did he just say?" Another whispers, "That can't be right." But Malcolm doesn't pause. Because truth, once spoken, cannot be half revealed. It must be complete. I am Malcolm Reed. Founder, majority shareholder, and owner of this airline. The aircraft sitting on that runway, the one you believe I don't belong on, was purchased under my signature. The registry in Washington lists my name. The corporate charter lists my name. The payroll you depend on, flows from me. The silence afterward is seismic. The kind of silence that shifts the ground under your feet. The kind that makes every witness realize they are standing in the middle of a moment they'll repeat for years to come. Harris scoffs, but the sound is weaker this time. It carries no conviction. No. That's ridiculous. You? Owner? Do you think we're fools? But Malcolm doesn't argue. He reaches into his briefcase, smooth, steady, and pulls out a document folder. Thick, official, undeniable. He hands it to the receptionist, whose hands shake as she opens it. She begins to read aloud, voice trembling but clear enough for everyone to hear. Certificate of Incorporation. Reed Global Aviation, majority shareholder, Malcolm Reed. Registered address. Washington, D.C., verification stamp dated March 12 of last year. She looks up, wide-eyed. It says his name. He's listed as owner. The lobby explodes in murmurs. Gasps, whispers, the shuffle of disbelief. Someone mutters, "No way." Another breathes, "Oh my God, it's true." And Harris, Captain Harris, the man who spent the last 15 minutes humiliating Malcolm, stands frozen. His mouth opens, but no words come. Because arrogance has no defense against proof. Malcolm speaks again, his voice steady, sharp. I gave you every chance. I told you my name. I told you to confirm. And instead of verifying truth, you chose humiliation. Instead of professionalism, you chose prejudice. And now everyone in this terminal knows the truth. You tried to throw your employer out of his own company. The silence that follows lasts exactly 5 seconds. 5 seconds where every eye in the room is locked on Harris. 5 seconds where the weight of his career, his reputation, and his arrogance begins to crush him. Finally, Harris stammers. This can't, it's not possible. I've flown for this airline for years. I would have known. But Malcolm interrupts, his voice firmer now. You would have known if you ever believed that ownership could look like me. But you didn't. You saw my skin, my clothes, and you decided I didn't belong. And now, your ignorance stands exposed before every witness here. The businessman in the corner speaks loudly, breaking the silence. He told you his name. Twice. You refused to check. That's on you, Captain. Another voice joins. I recorded everything. Every word you said. The whole world's going to hear this. And then the murmurs become louder, stronger, unstoppable. Phones buzzing with notifications. Whispers turning into outrage. Harris's authority, once absolute, now crumbling like dust. He tries to defend himself, but his voice cracks. I was only doing my duty. Protocol demands. No, Malcolm cuts in, cold, precise. Protocol demands verification. Not humiliation. Not dismissal. Not you people. The words strike hard. And Harris flinches, because he knows, everyone heard that phrase. Everyone knows what it meant. The receptionist, voice firm now, speaks into her headset. Cancel security. Situation resolved. Her tone has shifted. Moments ago, she was trembling under Harris's authority. Now, she speaks with certainty, aligning herself with truth. Harris looks around, desperate for support. But the faces around him tell the story, some furious, some disgusted, some simply staring at him with pity. No one stands with him. Not anymore. Malcolm Reed, the man who walked in underestimated, stands now revealed as the owner. The balance of power has flipped completely. And Harris knows it. You can hear it in the crack of his voice. You can feel it in the silence that smothers him. A silence louder than any protest, any defense. Malcolm takes one final step closer, his voice low but cutting like steel. You said men like me don't fly private. You said men like me don't belong. Let me make something clear, Captain Harris. Men like me don't just fly private. We build the planes. We own the runways. We sign the checks that keep your wings in the sky. And today, you learned that the hard way. The room exhales as if a storm has finally broken. Some whisper, unbelievable. Others murmur, he destroyed him. But everyone knows this moment will not end here. Because humiliation can be dismissed. But exposure? Exposure spreads. And the exposure of Captain Harris has only just begun. You just heard the silence shatter when the truth came out. If that moment hit you, drop a comment about how it felt when the tables finally turned. And share this with someone who needs a reminder that power can flip in a single sentence. The air in the terminal is still heavy. Like the residue of a storm that passed but left wreckage behind. People whisper, but no one dares to move first. And in the middle of it all stands Captain Harris, once untouchable, now exposed. His face has gone pale. The arrogance is gone, stripped bare. What's left is a man trying to cling to dignity when there's nothing left to hold. But Malcolm doesn't press further. He doesn't need to. Because the weight of the truth already has Harris pinned to the ground. The businessman with the phone raises his voice again. I've sent the recording. It's already online. And just like that, the ripple begins. The receptionist looks toward Malcolm, voice soft but full of newfound respect. Mr. Reed. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Malcolm nods, but his tone is steady, measured. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to every person who will walk through this terminal and be judged before they're seen. Today it was me. Tomorrow, it could be someone without power to fight back. The words strike deep. A few of the staff lower their eyes in shame. Because everyone knows he's right. Harris tries to speak, voice trembling. This is all a misunderstanding. It's not what it looks like. But his words are drowned out by the buzzing of phones. One assistant gasps as she looks at her screen. It's trending. Already. The video's at 20,000 views in the last 10 minutes. Another adds, hashtags everywhere. Hashtag terminal truth. Hashtag owner thrown out. People are furious. Harris's face tightens in panic. Because the humiliation is no longer contained within these walls. It's spreading, fast. And Malcolm? He simply stands calm, unshaken. Because when truth is on your side, you don't need to chase vindication. Vindication finds you. By the next morning, the story is everywhere. News anchors lead with it. Breaking, airline captain attempts to expel company's black owner from private terminal. Clips of Harris's voice saying "You people don't belong here" play on loop. Panelists shake their heads in disbelief, analysts dissect what it means for the company. And Malcolm watches it unfold, not with glee, but with a quiet weight. Because he knows, this isn't about one man's humiliation. It's about an entire system laid bare. Meanwhile, corporate headquarters goes into crisis mode. Executives on late-night calls. Public relations scrambling to draft statements. Every whisper in the boardroom feels like a dagger aimed at Harris. One executive slams his fist on the table. 47 complaints in 15 years. 47. We buried them all. Paid out settlements. Signed NDAs. And now? Now it's out in the open. Another voice, sharp with panic. The shareholders are furious. We lost $80 million in market value overnight. Sponsors are threatening to pull contracts. And then, the line no one wanted to say. We can't protect him anymore. For Harris, the fall is brutal. First comes the suspension. An email, clinical and cold, effective immediately, "You are relieved of duty pending investigation." Then comes the press conference. Executives stand at the podium, voices grave. We condemn the behavior witnessed in the viral footage. This does not reflect the values of our airline. And though they don't say his name, everyone knows. But the public isn't satisfied. They demand accountability. They demand change. Within weeks, lawsuits emerge. Past employees step forward, voices long silenced now rising with courage. He humiliated me during training. He told me people like me don't belong in the cockpit. He cost me my career. The pattern is undeniable. The settlements are public now, dollar amounts flashing across headlines, $2.3 million in discrimination claims. And Harris's reputation? Burned beyond recognition. Once respected in every aviation circle, now he's a cautionary tale. The man who mocked his own employer and collapsed under the weight of arrogance. But the consequences don't stop with him. The company itself faces a reckoning. Malcolm, though he never sought this storm, refuses to let it pass without transformation. He calls for a full review of hiring practices. He demands diversity audits, transparency in promotions, mandatory anti-bias training. At first, the board resists. Too expensive. Too disruptive. Too political. But Malcolm's voice cuts through the noise. Too late. The world is watching. Either we lead change, or we get dragged by it. And the choice becomes clear. Reform begins. Policies shift. New leadership rises where old arrogance once ruled. For the public, the story becomes more than news. It becomes a parable. A reminder that prejudice can humiliate in private, but it can also collapse in public. Parents tell their children about it. Teachers discuss it in classrooms. Community leaders cite it in speeches. Because in Malcolm's calm resistance, in his refusal to bend, people see a mirror of their own struggles. And in Harris's downfall, they see justice, imperfect, delayed, but real. 6 weeks after the incident, Harris is photographed leaving his home, suitcase in hand. No uniform. No entourage. Just a man stripped of the pride that once carried him like armor. Reporters shout questions. Do you regret your words? Do you think you were treated fairly? Do you have anything to say to Malcolm Reed? But he doesn't answer. Because he knows, no words can save him now. And Malcolm? He doesn't chase the spotlight. He doesn't gloat. He simply continues building, leading, changing. But the story follows him everywhere. Strangers stop him in airports to shake his hand. Pilots salute him with new respect. Passengers whisper his name with admiration. Because he didn't just win a confrontation. He ignited a reckoning. And in that reckoning, an entire industry was forced to confront its reflection. The consequence was clear. Arrogance fell. Truth rose. And the man they tried to erase stood taller than ever. But even as the dust settles, one truth remains sharp. This was never just about a captain and an owner. It was about a mirror held to society. And what it revealed cannot be unseen. Arrogance collapsed, and accountability rose. But the consequences didn't stop with one man, they spread across an entire system. If this part opened your eyes, share this story now. Because the more people hear it, the faster real change spreads. 6 months later, the hum of change is everywhere. The terminal that once echoed with humiliation now feels different, its silence no longer oppressive, but purposeful. Policies have shifted. Faces have changed. And Malcolm Reed's name isn't just printed on ownership papers, it's spoken with respect. The airline moves forward under new direction, and the reforms Malcolm insisted on are no longer bullet points in a corporate report. They're living, breathing practice. Every employee, from receptionist to captain, now undergoes rigorous anti-bias training. Promotion boards are diversified, hiring pipelines widened. A new ombudsman's office is established, with full authority to investigate discrimination complaints. The results are measurable. For the first time, diverse applicants make up nearly half of the new pilot class. Employee surveys show morale climbing. Shareholders, once panicked, now point to improved public trust as a sign of stability. And Malcolm? He keeps his distance from the spotlight, but his influence is everywhere. His calm defiance that day has become legend. Conferences quote him. Business schools study him. Communities tell his story like scripture. But for him, the work is quieter. He meets with trainees, listens to staff, pushes for change not just in policy but in culture. Because he knows, laws and policies can shift, but hearts take longer. And he's patient enough to see it through. As for Captain Harris, his name has all but vanished. He resigned quietly after the investigation, stripped of his pension, his record stained beyond repair. The man once so sure of his authority now drifts on the margins. There are whispers of him applying to smaller regional carriers, of his applications denied. No airline dares associate with him now, not with his face stamped on one of the most infamous videos of the decade. His arrogance, once unshakable, has crumbled into obscurity. And obscurity, for a man who thrived on command, is the deepest punishment of all. Publicly, though, Malcolm's story resonates far beyond aviation. Advocates cite it in government hearings. Commentators frame it as a turning point in corporate accountability. Podcasts, documentaries, and panels retell the events with one unshakable conclusion: silence and arrogance cannot withstand the truth. One academic report summarizes it plainly. In 15 years, 47 complaints and $2.3 million in settlements achieved nothing. One moment of exposure achieved everything. And that sentence spreads like wildfire. Yet, even with change visible, Malcolm refuses to let comfort soften the lesson. At a press conference marking the 6-month reforms, he takes the stage briefly, not to bask, but to remind. His voice is calm, steady, deliberate. What happened that day was never about one man. It was about a system. A system that believed arrogance outweighed evidence, that prejudice could pass as authority, that silence would protect the powerful. We proved it wrong. But reform is not the end. Reform is the beginning. It is now on us, all of us, to ensure dignity is not a privilege, but a given. The crowd applauds. Cameras flash. Reporters scribble. But more than the spectacle, it's the silence after his words that matters. Because in that silence, people feel the truth settling deep. For the employees in that terminal, life has never been the same. The receptionist who once lowered her eyes now stands taller, knowing her voice matters. The assistant who whispered in doubt now speaks openly in meetings. Even the passengers recall the day with reverence, reminding one another that arrogance can collapse in seconds. And in that transformation, Malcolm sees proof. Proof that injustice may strike suddenly, violently, but resistance, even calm resistance, has the power to outlast it. So where does this story end? Not with Harris in disgrace. Not with Malcolm in victory. But with a mirror turned outward, to us. Because injustice thrives not only in terminals and boardrooms, but in schools, in offices, in daily moments where someone is told, you don't belong. And the question that remains is not what Malcolm did. It's what we will do. Will we stand silent when arrogance claims the stage? Or will we, like Malcolm Reed, hold steady, and let truth speak louder than prejudice? This story is not just about humiliation and power. It's about the collapse of arrogance and the rise of accountability. It's about how one man, underestimated and dismissed, revealed a truth so powerful it forced an empire to change. And if you take anything from this, let it be this. You don't need to shout to bring injustice down. You don't need to rage to force change. Sometimes, all you need is calm, unshakable truth. Because arrogance may roar. But truth always endures. And now, listener, it's your turn. If this story has stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Drop a comment about the moment everything changed. Because every conversation adds weight, and every voice adds pressure. And remember, injustice counts on silence. But silence, broken at the right time, can collapse an empire.